let's start. Thank you all so much for coming to our inaugural book club, digital book club, the only book club where you don't have to read the book and you don't have to wear pants. I hope it's yay. So you guys all know me, so I'm not gonna introduce myself, but I would love to introduce you to Randi, who is awesome. She is an extremely accomplished body worker and yoga teacher, and she runs her own studio in Fargo, North Dakota. And she's also a self-care mentor. And I met her a few years ago when I was in Fargo through EI, Betsy. And I was very sure that I did not need to take care of myself because I would do that after I was successful. And Randi pointed out to me that maybe that was not the best way to live my life. So I remember we were on the phone and I was walking around the parking lot of a gas station that we were turning into a pop-up park, talking to you about how maybe I should try to keep a journal to write down all the crazy. And I still have the journal somewhere. I'm still writing it too.
That's good.
So that's kind of my intro. And I wanted to, that's my head. It just dove out of screen. Joey, do you want me to turn off your video? I'm going to turn off her video.
Adorable.
Do her a favor.
Okay.
Now that I put her on blast, I'm going to turn off her video. So that was my intro. And so now the format of today is I'm basically going to interview Randi a little bit about her life and about how the book played a role in her life. And then we'll open it up and just generally discuss life, the book if you read it, if not, sort of how you manage your life. And that's the format. So Randi, first official question. Do you want to give us an overview, 10,000 foot view of your professional story thus far?
Yeah. Well, I think it was Deb who said how when we asked what she did, it was like, how long do you have? Because I'm also because I'm also one of those people that have kind of dabbled in a lot of things and followed a lot of different desires and paths to lead me where I am right now. But the nutshell version is that I became a massage therapist about 10 years ago. And that's when I just first started learning about how the body works and the body and mind connection, and that there's so much healing that can be done by connecting the two. And so I just worked as a massage therapist. I was also playing music, and I got my degree in writing, and then I became a yoga teacher as well. And so I just kind of did all those things at the same time for a while, and just like moved. I loved traveling and wandering, and so I traveled a lot and learned a lot and worked for this person and at that spa and at that ski resort and all sorts of things. And then but that was really valuable education. And then what led me to here is I was living in Utah where I went to massage school, and I was kind of at a crossroads at my life of like, okay, well, I could either really hunker down and stay here, or I could do something else. And so I was brushing my teeth one day and had this revelation that I needed to travel and write and tell people's healing stories. And so I'm like, okay, well, what's the best thing that's going to get me there? So I decided to move back home to Fargo to mooch off my parents and and save some money. And then I was going to go off on my true calling. And 5 years later, I'm still in Fargo, and I opened up a studio here, and I met someone and got married and have a house, and I'm like super adulting in Fargo right now. It's the opposite thing I ever thought, but I love it. It seemed to be where all of my paths have kind of come together and have created an environment where I can 100% focus on healing people. And using everything that I know. And so now I spend my days doing body work with people. I teach a lot of yoga workshops and self-care workshops. And then thanks to Michelle, I started doing some self-care mentoring. Her and Jake, our friend, they were like, help us, we're tired. And I was like, well, I can teach you how to implement some self-care into your life. And so they were kind of my guinea pigs on the mentoring program that I have now. And so now I've been doing that, and I started a podcast and on self-care, and it's just kind of turned into more of a holistic way of helping people. So it's kind of a rambling answer, but that's me right now.
Question, so I feel like that's very appropriate.
Yeah, well, and it's hard, I'm sure people listening can relate. Like, there's just so many things that go together to create who you are and what you do, especially if you like to do a bunch of different things. So that's kind of my nutshell version. I still play music, I still write, but it's very focused, and it's all to pursue a main goal instead of kind of being all over the place floating around. So,
and what is that main goal that it's all to pursue?
Well, while I was journaling recently, I was really asking myself that question, like, what is the point of what I'm doing, and pursuing all of these things? And I came down to the fact that it's to remind people of who they are. So everything I do, I want to help people tune into their own inner wisdom and how they can heal on a deep level. And it's not just going and getting a massage. It's not just seeking advice from this person. It's being able to cultivate a relationship with yourself and enough health within yourself so you can take what anyone says and counter it against your own wisdom. Like, is this going to serve me? Is this the path that I should be on? And so everything I'm trained in and everything I offer people kind of all go back to that same mission of just helping them be themselves. Because at the end of the day, you're your wisest counselor. You have so many answers within if you just listen and trust it. So
that sounds super cool. It's so easy to get swayed by the shoulds of the world. So if you're there to help people strengthen their best voice, the voice of their best self, that sounds like a worthy calling.
I hope so. I try. I mean, that's honestly, I've had my own healing journey, and that's what's helped me the most, is just continually honoring what I'm hearing from myself. And a lot of it is I hear it in other people. So I read books and go to professionals, and then they'll trigger something or enlighten something that sparks within. That's yeah, okay, that's my next step. Thank you. So if I can be that person for people, that's great.
So what does a day look like for you?
It varies. My usual day is, so I have my own self-care practice, but that's also very, it's structured chaos, I guess, is the best thing that I've come to find, because I'm not a very I wake up at this time and then I do this and then I do that and then we were talking about that before, that gives me anxiety. So that's really not my personality. But I wake up and I have time dedicated to doing nothing, actually, or something if I feel like it. So I wake up and make myself a cup of coffee, and I light a candle and I just sit there for a while. And sometimes I journal, and sometimes I read, or sometimes I do an Instagram post or something. But that's just my time I get to start the day with some empty space, which I have found to be very healing. And then depending on my schedule at the studio, if I have clients, then I'm at the studio. If I'm not, then I'm in my pajamas cuddled with my dog trying to be productive. And so it's just a variation of working one-on-one with clients, or taking a call, or teaching a workshop at night. And then in the evenings, that just depends on the season. In the wintertime, I'm a lot more homebody-y. In the summertime, I'm usually outside doing something. So.
Well, in Fargo, I think being a homebody is appropriate in the winter.
It's hard. I have to have structures in place that get me out of the house. I went skiing yesterday, which was neat. So, so that was a challenge that I did. for myself. I used to live in the mountains, I've become kind of a snob about skiing, so I never go like around here. There's this like little derpy hill. It is pretty. I can't be too mean, but
little
like,
derpy skiing.
Good. It's better than nothing, and I had a good time. So that was good. That was my winter challenge for the day.
Love it. So I have lots of questions about your structure and your controlled chaos, but before we talk about that, I'd love to know what's your favorite moment of your workday?
My favorite moment of my workday,
or your professional life, because I know not every day is the same.
I think it's those times when everything kind of clicks, like when I am working one-on-one with a person and they just start to get it. They just start to see that there are other options. They don't have to live in pain. They don't have to feel guilty about everything that they do. Their self-care doesn't have to look like someone else's self-care. Like when people really start to feel empowered, and I get to be around for that, that's pretty awesome. that's really great. So it's that one-on-one exchange. That's what I love. Yeah. But I also love when I get to be at home cuddling with my golden doodle.
Not hard to love. Yeah. Only you get paid for it.
Yeah, I know, right? Someday. But yeah, so I guess that's probably my favorite thing.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've really discovered a talent for helping people hear their like best voice.
Yeah, I guess that is a talent.
I think it's a talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I like to use the term holding space. Mm-hmm. I like to just hold space for what needs to happen. You know, going in, a lot of my training with the approach to the body is not going in with an agenda. Like I'm not there to fix them. I'm there to tune into what they need, and that could be different than what I initially think. So it's listening to the body. It's listening to where the conversation's going, and just staying open to what actually needs to happen instead of what I'm trying to analyze and control. So.
How did you learn that?
I think a lot of it was I went to a lot of healing practitioners and realized what was working for me. So doing my own healing. But I think the other thing is that it's a lot of the training that I have, like in craniosacral therapy, it's a very subtle therapy, and you have to be still and you have to be quiet and you have to be open to what you're actually feeling. Because if you try to force anything, you're not going to feel it. And so that's just become kind of a metaphor for me of like going in with a pure intention and just being. I found the most effective body work is when you are tuning into what is so and what is coming up and how muscles are responding and even their breath is responding. Those subtle cues, and then going from there. And anytime I try to force it, I get like panicked, you know. I'm like, okay, I really want to fix them. Okay, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, no, that's not how it works. So a lot of trial and error too. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years. So there's been a lot of awkward times.
A perfect segue into my next super nosy question.
Okay.
Right? You're excited now.
I like it.
I'm wondering about the times that there are errors or where you're kind of worried things aren't going right. Do you have long, dark nights of the soul?
Yes, I do. I think long, dark nights of the soul are necessary. I think they happen frequently. And I think it's refreshing and helpful to acknowledge that, because you know, there's always this like best foot forward, like I'm successful and you can do this too. And I blah, 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 blah. And like, nobody wants to Instagram when they're ugly crying on their pillow, watching Golden Girls, you know, like, but like, we've all been there, you know, and I feel like whenever you're trying to do something worth and you're being vulnerable yourself, I mean, it's just part of the business. It is part of the process, is to doubt yourself and to be afraid and to think you're a phony. You know, I mean, everybody feels that way. And so to just accept it, and when it's there, it sucks, but it's just like, okay, no, like, this means I'm on to something. This means I'm trying something new. I'm not playing it safe. And I am going to second guess myself, but I have you know, I cling to the positive feedback that I get, and I cling to my own inner wisdom and my own intuition. And in my dark times, I just try to embrace it and think, okay, what am I learning from this? Why is this coming up? And then trusting that I'm not always going to feel this way, and that when I wake up in the morning, it'll be better, and I can just go back to the light a little bit.
So
yeah.
what kind of self-care do you take of yourself around those days?
A lot of it is compassion, I think. It's not necessarily an act. Like, sometimes it is. Like, sometimes I want to just take a bath or do some meditation or whatever I need to do. But a lot of it is just really tuning into why that darkness is coming up. Because just like body pain, that kind of mental and emotional stress is trying to tell us something. It's a signal that something is off. And so when we feel anxiety or depression or self-doubt, those shouldn't be shoved under the rug. You know, those are there to tell us, like, hey, something's got to shift. And so I, as much as I can, like, I give into it and I give it a hug and I let it process. And then when I can, I think, okay, like, well, what is really going on here? What do I need to change? And that's a hard question. And sometimes I get hard answers back, but it turns it into a valuable experience and a really helpful experience, and has actually helped shape a lot of my decisions and moves in life, is from those dark times. So
I feel like I need to have this on tape and like play it next time I'm having a bad day. Like, remember, it's great. Something great's gonna come out of it.
Remember, it's okay, and your body's just trying to talk to you. So yeah.
So tell me about Essentialism. How did this play into your journey?
Yeah, this one is an interesting this book, I wouldn't say this book was like a huge like defining moment for me. Why I was drawn to recommend it and want to talk about it is because a lot of these principles I was already starting to notice and implement. And so when Essentialism came out, I was like, oh, this is like a thing. Like, there's some words and structure and like philosophy behind what I'm noticing for myself. So it was almost like this permission slip to keep going with being more intentional and doing less and simplifying my life. It was just like, well, this guy says that I should do it, so I'm gonna. So that's kind of why this book has been so important to me, and why I recommend it. Is it was such a refreshing counter voice to what we hear all the time of like hustle life and, you know, like more, and it's just like, no, there's so much wisdom in less, and it can actually give us more. So that's why I love it.
Was there a particular part that like was that lightning bolt moment, or was it the whole gestalt?
It was kind of the whole thing. I think one of the phrases in there that I kind of take on as a mantra is the less but better. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do less, but that actually means it's going to be better than, you know, trying to force more onto something. And I have my degree in creative writing, and that's there's a whole chapter about editing, like editing your life, and that's huge in creative writing. Almost any bit of writing is better when you cut it in half. And so that's just true about life. Like, we really don't need all the things that we're wanting to do. And when you can do less with more energy, then you're going to have better results. And so that's a good phrase that I like to keep repeating, is less the better.
Is there a time when you took that on board and it really helped you? Or didn't?
I'd say it's pretty much always helped me. I feel like there's never been a time when I did less. And that needs to be understood of what is meant by that. Less isn't slacking off and being lazy. Less is being really intentional about what you're doing and not oversaturating something. And so when I've been lazy, then that hasn't gone very well. But when I've been like, no, I'm actually only going to focus on this and this, then things have gone really well. And I guess an example of that is my bodywork practice. I mean, I've been trained in so many different modalities, and I was trying to offer a million different things to people. And then when I got trained in clinical Thai massage and I saw how amazing it was, I was just like, what if this is all I offered? Then nobody could choose, and this could be my jam, and like maybe that will be okay. But I was afraid of that, and it was okay. And I'm the most, like, this has been like the most successful I've ever been, being this focused on a certain type. And I'm glad I have other training because I incorporate it. But being like, this is what I do. It's very simple and straightforward. I'm going to do only this, but I'm going to be really, really good at it. And so that, I guess, professionally has been a really good choice for me.
So it's like you took the generalist approach to finding your specialty, but you still use the generalism that you picked up on the way.
Yeah. Ta-da!
Yeah.
You know, I think what that means is that like, if you are like me and you love learning and you like a bunch of different things, there's a healthy way to incorporate that into your life. So you can have a bunch of different things going on and a bunch of different trainings, but you're really clear on why you're gaining all of this knowledge from a bunch of different places. It's so you can bring it back in a specific environment and in a focused way. So I really love that I've created a business where I get to have my ADD and I get to have like my love for learning, because it all can come back to serve my mission and my greater purpose. So yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit and I just loved it so much. So I'm going to try to figure out how to ask you so you'll talk about it again. Okay. But I'm curious, I was so surprised that you suggested this book because I know you and you're so emotional and connected. And this book was very like, if I was going to build a robot, this is the pattern that I would use for like optimal efficiency in human life.
Right.
So I would love you to speak to that.
Well, it's funny because when I read the book, I was like, yes. But that's because that's like the counterpose to how I am, you know, like I love being free spirited, and that's like how I've identified myself. But when I can implement a more structured way and I can have something that's like really straightforward, but I really can like believe in, it's really helpful for me. And so when I read the book, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to implement all these things right now. And it was like, how can I do this? How can I? Probably a lot of people, but it's like, I'm going to take this one thing. Like, this is like my life goal, you know, like this is what I want to keep bringing everything I do back to. So it's become like an approach to life instead of like a recipe that I have to follow. And so because I have a bunch of ideas and I have a bunch of things that I want to pursue, but then, you know, when I read this book, it reminds me that it's like, okay, Randy, you should chill and like, let's talk about this and let's, you know, follow these kind of checkpoints on like what should be implemented. And it actually helps me with my anxiety and my overwhelm, because it reminds me that it's okay to just be doing a few things, and that's like the wisest choice. So I don't really look at it as a gauge for like my lifestyle and my daily habits. It's more of a gauge of like my approach to life.
It sounds like it gave language to like your inner truth and your inner voice.
Yeah.
I like the permission.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been implementing like minimalism and simplifying. Like when I moved back to Fargo, I was living in a townhouse in Utah full of stuff, and I sold everything and only moved back with what fit in my Subaru. And then I did get an apartment, my first apartment. I was borrowing dishes from my parents, and I had an air mattress and a lamp, and that's like all I had in a studio apartment. And I was like, this is awesome. All that other stuff that I like worked hard to acquire like didn't even matter. And so I was on that trajectory of like, I want to simplify. I don't want these things distracting me. And the more things that can kind of be on autopilot, then the more creative energy I have. And so I was applying it to my everyday life. And then when I read Essentialism, it was like, oh, this is how it can be applied to my business and my life and everything that comes together. But it is a onward journey. There's not an end destination with this kind of work. I don't think with any kind of work. It's just going deeper and deeper and deeper with it. And so they're just good reminders. So calm down, Michelle.
Never. Awesome. No, I love it. I think, it's good for me and those like me to remember it's not a recipe. It's just an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that was a recipe for him.
Yeah.
And his personality and his quirks and his way of dealing with his own issues. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the beauty of exchanging knowledge and ways of life is you can read it and be like, okay, well, I'm going to take that and apply it into my own recipe. And it just, it's just tools in your tool belt, really.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'd love to hear I'd love to open this up and start the discussion portion. I'd love to hear about the tools in everybody's tool belt.
Yay.
Randy, I'm wondering, do you have a specific question you want to kick this off with?
Yeah. One thing I love to hear from people is like how their inner wisdom can.
Randy, I muted you. Can you repeat your question? Trying to get all fancy.
I know.
Prototype, folks. Yes. Prototype.
Okay. So cruel. You asked me a question and then you're like, kidding. No, the question that I'd love to hear from everyone is, or the answer is, how does your inner wisdom communicate with you? And so, for example, like, is it a feeling in the body, or do you get like a gut feeling, or how do you know when something is serving you and what isn't serving you? Because when you can recognize how your body communicates with you, then that's when you can know how to follow your own path. And so I'd love to hear how you guys do that.
Awesome. So I'm gonna unmute everyone, and anyone who wants to answer can jump right in or mute themselves again.
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I loved what you said. I resonated with a lot of what you said, Randy. I like that you said you like the autopilot because it gives room for your creativity. Mm-hmm. And I'd really like to tap into my own creativity. A lot of times how I go by my own feelings are my intuition. And usually I feel a real strong connection to someone. And when it's really strong, I get a sensation in the top of my head, like a tingle.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then when I'm listening, when I'm coaching someone and I'm listening, there's just this knowing I get really tuned in. And I'm not someone in life that always tunes in, but on a one-to-one basis with people, there's just kind of this pull, this connection where I really hear what they're saying without knowing why. It's just kind of there. But when we're talking back and forth, sometimes when there's that strong, I want to say like a spiritual connection, that's when I get the tingling at the top of my head. It's just the oddest sensation. I'm like, okay, now I know it's right. I'm right on, so that's what I do.
Well, that's really important to acknowledge, because it does feel differently for everyone. And so if you shut off that feeling because you didn't hear that from anyone else, like that would be really sad. And so you do have this unique relationship with yourself, with your intuition, and so it's really cool to be like, yep, that's my thing. I'm going to embrace it and use it. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
I can go, because I feel like, Donna, what you said resonates with me. I'm Betsy, by the way, friend of Michelle's from Chicago. Yeah, or at least I should say Myers-Briggs tells me that I'm a very intuitive person. But what I've learned over time is that I'm also a very anxious person, has lots of anxiety, nothing so severe that I've ever been like diagnosed by a psychiatrist, but I've made lots of big life decisions over the past 10 years that are driven by intuition, and it's almost like those big decisions have been, so clear to me in the moment of like, this is what I have to do, whether it's professional, relational, a move to a new place. But then after that decision, then there's like the execution of it, right? And you get into the kind of like, what does this mean for my day to day? Michelle knows I started a nonprofit a couple years ago, and it was, I felt so sort of clear-eyed about the need to do this, and felt so clear on like the big picture, why this is an important thing for me to do right now. But then the day-to-day is like very scary, and it's filled with all these moments where all the very human things of like, I don't want to feel rejected. I don't want to fail. I'm putting myself in all these, experiences that are just incredibly intimidating and require me to come out of my introverted kind of disposition and to kind of push myself in so many ways. And so I feel like staying connected to that inner wisdom for me over the past couple of years especially has meant being able to identify, what's that inner voice? Where is that inner voice coming from? Is it like the anxious thought that's like, oh, you could just cancel that incredibly intimidating meeting, is that like anxiety speaking, or is that something else? And I think it's been a process for me to realize that sometimes the anxious voice isn't the only voice, and it's actually getting in the way of like the inner compass, if you will, like that's put me on this path that I continue to, when I can check in with it and I can push the anxious voice out of the way, it says, nope, this is still what you want to be doing. But that's been really hard because the anxious voice sometimes is very loud. So
yeah, you have certain practices that help you differentiate the voices?
Yeah, I think writing about it has been really helpful. Sometimes if I can tell that I'm like starting to get in my head and get, anxious or feel nervous or feel kind of fuzzy, whatever the opposite of clear-minded is, fuzzy-minded. Yeah, sometimes stopping to write about it for a second, or just kind of write about the why, like just kind of reconnecting with why I'm doing whatever I'm doing, whether it's like in a relationship or, you know, doing something work related, kind of bringing that back up to the surface and giving it more of a voice really helps. And then I think also just like putting a not actually a name, although I could do that, but putting a name to that voice of being like, nope, that is anxiety. I'm going to call you out like that. And like, you're just going to sit over here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going away, but like, you know, I can just kind of identify it better. But I think writing helps. I also think just like telling other people that I feel comfortable with, that like, this is how I'm feeling right now. And actually, I think letting it sort of have space and not be this thing that I'm like hiding makes it less scary. You know, it sort of diminishes the voice, or it kind of universalizes it, because someone else will be like, oh yeah, yes, that is for sure. Or like, I would feel the same way. It's kind of like, okay, this isn't just my beef. Like, I can get out of my head and keep going. So
Yeah. Saying hello to it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, writing is such an important tool because it can make the intangible tangible, and it can like get it out of this kind of ethereal place, and then we can read it and we can read it back to us, and it's like we're having a conversation with ourselves in a very healthy way. So not only does it release energy, it also like shows your truth back to you, which can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A friend recommended using different colored pens for each identified sort of voice or thought pattern.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, she gets real into it. Like, she has very strong recommendations for what those voices should be, which are awesome. But short version, different pen colors. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, you do.
Might try it.
So does anyone else have an answer for Randy's question? Some of you have been muted because there was background noise. So if you're talking and I don't hear you, that might be why. All right. So one of my favorite things that I read in this book was, it was really early on, and it said, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. Oh, I can't see myself, so I don't know. Ta-da! So I'm wondering.
Oh, you can see it. It's good.
I'm wondering if anyone on this call has noticed a time in their life when their priorities were out of whack, or maybe right now their priorities are out of whack, and who it is or what it is that they're allowing to set those priorities. Just to get real personal.
I'll jump in here on that one. Can you guys hear me okay? I know a lot of times people say they can't hear me.
There's a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I'll try to get a little closer to the microphone. Is that better?
Much better, yeah.
Okay. I'm Kimber, so I was able to resonate with everything you guys said. Well, not everything, but some from all of you. And Michelle, your question of priorities is, I'm right there right now, where I have spent pretty much my entire life just being a caregiver and taking care of everybody but me. So this topic of self-care, I can really relate to. Randy, I resonated with you. I've been a massage therapist for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And just really was into the trigger point and deep tissue, not because that's where my heart was, but that's where the money was. That seems where everybody. And so I just kind of kept going with that, even though it wasn't really aligning with me until recently. I kind of got out of massage therapy to pursue coaching. But one thing I'm really realizing now is how difficult it is for me to take care of me. And that is something that I'm really working on. It is easy peasy for me to take care of everybody else. But when it's time to take care of me, I struggle with feelings of, well, that's selfish. And it might be somewhat of a generational thing. I think you younger gals maybe don't have that stigma as much, that taking care of yourself is a selfish thing. But that's something that for me, I'm really working on switching my priorities and realizing that, you know, self-care is not selfish. That I can't just keep giving and giving and giving if I don't fill myself back up. So that's a big journey that I'm on right now. So I'm super stoked to be part of this group. I think it's exactly what I need right now.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. One thing I will say, like in the healing industry, like in my most intense times when I'm really struggling, like I'll say like, okay, what would I tell my clients to do? And it really turns into this like practicing what you preach kind of a thing. And that's why I love being in this industry, because I know that if I'm not doing it, that my business will suffer, my clients will suffer. Like the healthier I become, the more I have to give. And especially like even in the coaching industry, like pretty much everything of value that I have that I've used to help people is because I healed myself with it first. And so it's like this thing where I've kind of taken it on as part of my job description. Like it's an item on my training. And so that might be able to help some of the shift of like, you know, feeling guilty for taking care of yourself. Like it's all education. And every time you do it, it like directly relates to your clients and the people that you have in your world. And it will empower them to do what you're trying to help them to do when you can fully say like, well, I've been there and I did it, and this is why I'm able to be here for you. So it is kind of this just like changing the conversation a little bit, but it's just so important. And even if you're not in the healing industry, like if you're a parent or a friend, like I just think that's kind of the example that I want to set for the people that I'm helping. And if I break, then I'm not going to be able to help anyone at all. So it becomes less of a selfish act and more of like this is what I need to do to survive, and this is what I need to do to help you. And so kind of makes it a little bit more digestible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's spot on. I love it. And a lot of my giving was with my kids. My oldest is 32, so I've been doing the parenting gig for a long time, and then just have an aging mother, so it just seems like there's constantly other people to take care of. And it's like, well, there's no time to take care of me, but I really, you know, I'm working so hard now to shift that around. And you're right, we can't give if we don't take care of ourselves. We can't give effectively. So I love
it's a journey. It's a journey.
We
get there. I mean,
mean,
recognizing it is half the battle. So
yeah.
I particularly like the reframe. It's not self-care, it's professional development.
Yes. Yeah, I should put that on a pillow across this.
Yeah, a coffee mug would be perfect.
Oh yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah.
So does anybody else want to chime in with their priorities? I feel like we should pick on Jake.
Is he here?
He is here.
I'm here. I was late. I'm really sorry.
Hi, Jake.
Hey.
Sorry, selfish thing going on here. My favorite people. I haven't seen him for a long time. Hello. Okay, go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of, I guess adding on to what Kimber just said, professionally speaking, there's always that idea that we have to have a job, and that job is kind of, because of the way our culture works, has always, at least in my life, kind of been the center of attention. And so when work is tough, life is kind of tough, and kind of making sure that even when work is tough, it doesn't mean the other waking hours of your week have to be that way. It's just kind of something I continually have to check in on and remind myself of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing else. Or go ahead.
No, I wasn't. I was.
Were you just keeping talking?
Exactly.
I get it. No, one thing I'll say along with priorities is focusing on the word alignment. Because when I think of times that my priorities have been off, it's because I was trying to align with something that wasn't in line with myself. like when I've done business ventures with other people, I became so obsessed with their alignment, and I was trying to like be with them on their journey and what they needed. And I thought, well, that's what you do when you work with other people, but then I was just totally ignoring anything that I needed to do or what I felt like my inner wisdom was telling me. And so it was like, okay, how can I become more aligned? And then the priorities become clear from that space. I don't know if that resonates with anyone, but
Yeah,
I think it
just
makes a lot of
completely.
sense.
Only completely.
yes.
No, 9%.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any final thoughts on the book or questions for Randi that they'd like to share before we start to wrap up?
Has everyone in this group read the book? No.
Which is okay, because you don't have to.
Right.
But if you want to run out and get it after, there's a link in the Eventbrite.
I am loving the book. I've just started it, but I'm loving it. And that's exactly, Randy, what you said. Less but better. It's extremely powerful. And that's what I've been telling myself since I started. Less but better. Less but better.
I think
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I had a point on, I don't know if it's with the prioritizing. I'm looking at my notes too, because I wrote some notes. When you said, Randy, like you've learned a lot of things over your life, right? And you like a lot of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you feel scattered, like, I know all these things, and then it kind of came together when you got clear on it, and then you put all the knowledge you learned together, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel. And I'm right at the point of, I'm still out there with all these things,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to put them together with my coaching. I have triathlon coaching, life coaching, and how do I put all these things together? And I'm kind of like in a little overwhelm right now because we're not done with the course. I'm in the course with Michelle in Massachusetts. And so I like what you said, because it's exactly how I feel. Like, I know there's a greater purpose. I know it's coming together, like that intuition, but I still feel like, okay, like I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know what it is. I want it.
Yeah, I think part of that is letting it be not something you have to figure out right now, because how I've been able to give you guys a distinct thing,
Yeah,
that was very recent. Like it came from me deciding one thing that made sense at the time, and then being open to course correction. And so you choose one thing and you try it out, and you think, okay, this is the kind of people that I want to help, athletes or whatever, based on your background. And then you just go there, and you need something to propel the action, because just sitting and waiting for it to all come together that might happen if you go into a cave and meditate for like a month or something. But like, I feel like the action is what gets you to your clarity. And so there's a visual out there. I don't know if it's in the book or not, but there's like a point of where you begin and where you want to be. And instead of a straight line from A to B, it's like this huge, like tangled mess. And then you get there. And that's the reality. And so, just whatever clarity you gain, start acting on it. And then once you get there, you can say, okay, yep, this is in alignment, or nope, this is not in alignment. So now I'm going to go here, and you're here and here and here and here. And then you can kind of get clearer and clearer. And so allowing it to be like, this might take me a few years. This is going to be an evolution. And, even with myself, like I keep refining and refining and refining my messaging to people. And that's based off what they say to me. Like, it's not all in my head, it's actually within theirs. And so
I understand.
Keep putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
like
the scary part, but
yeah.
I think that's great also too, what you said, Randy, about just letting it kind of naturally evolve and forcing it. And I know for me, there's been a sense of urgency because I'm in my 50s, and so I feel like this, like, oh my God, mean, I got to get this shit figured out now. I don't have time. So I can just let that go and be like, okay, it's okay. I can just chill and let it evolve naturally. Yeah, more, it does, when I'm forcing it, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't. So,
Yeah.
anyway, as much as I think that I've got this urgency, forcing it is just completely a waste of time. So what I do, just sit back and go, okay, I'm just going to let this evolve on its own. It's so much more effective.
But the cool thing about that you might be missing is that you have 17 years experience already in one thing, like, and a bunch of different things, you know, and so it's not like you're hurrying up to getting somewhere. You're already there. It's just using what you already have and trusting that you have enough to help people. And Michelle helped me realize that when I was talking to her a couple of weeks ago, because I was getting all in my head and like paranoid about what I'm doing. And she's like, Randi, like, you're already doing it. And I'm like, oh. And so because we look up to people and we are studying things and, you know, we don't think we're there yet, but you're there. Like, you have so much knowledge that you are already helping people with. And it is just learning how to frame it and package it up in a way that will get people to say yes, basically. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank Michelle.
So now that you all love Randi just as much as I do.
Oh gosh.
She's got a couple of really cool ways that you can work with her. Randi, do you want to explain?
Yeah. So
special offers.
Speaking of what Michelle has helped me do, so I do self-care mentoring, and that's kind of the thing I've been focusing on the most lately, and I do that remotely. And so I have just a one-time one-on-one call we can do, or the most popular option is a month-long mentorship, where we have an hour-long call in the beginning of the month, and then we have 3 check-in calls once a week. And those are like 15 to 20 minutes, and then we have an hour session at the end. And this is just to help people implement self-care into your life. So a few of you that are, you know, going from one thing to the next, and you you feel like you don't have time for yourself, or, you know, a lot of what we all feel. I can help provide a structure for that and kind of an accountability buddy. And we can, you know, each week kind of course correct between what needs to be done. So so that's been really fun. So that's usually $250, but I'll give you guys a discount on that. So 50% off, or $50 off of the month-long session, or $20 off of the just the one session for you guys if you'd like that. And so Michelle will send out a link to the description on my website, and you can just reach out to me via email for that. And then in March, I'm doing a month-long group self-care course where we're going to learn journaling, meditation, some physical practice, working through self-care roadblocks. And so if you go to my website and sign up for the pre-sale list, you'll get a discount on that too. So I don't know. That's what I got.
Sounds
I never
pretty cool.
know exactly how to you know, talk about it.
Well, you did.
You did. The supportive group. You did really well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
cool. So I love one-on-one work with people. So if that's something you think would be of value, I'd love to chat with you more about it. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Randi's website, because she didn't say, is naturallyrandikay.com. That's NaturallyRandikay. Did I spell it wrong? I spelled it wrong.
No, you spelled it right. R-A-N-D. It's naturally RANDIKAY, and that's what makes my real name is the I. So I was trying to put that out there. And then I do have a podcast called the Simple Self-Care Podcast, and that comes out once a week for free. So there's that too.
And I will share all of the links when the video goes up, so you don't have to remember how I spelled that.
Great.
Probably shouldn't. And you can find me on my website, michellekrasny.com, which I won't spell. The link will be on the synopsis. And I just wanted to quickly tell you, next month, we're doing another book club, February 25th at 4 p.m. We'll celebrate a month of energetic feminism for Valentine's Day month with energy alchemist Hillary May, who is an upstate New Yorker and has had a very interesting professional journey, including a master's in interpersonal and organizational communication and rhetorical theory. Can't say it. She also is a licensed doula. She did boudoir photography, and she picked a book that was very meaningful to her as she explored the role of women in sort of the religious world and the professional world. So the title of the book is a little risque. So if you're faint of heart or under 18, I'll give you a minute to cover your ears. Ready? Randi, thank you. The book is called Cunt, A Declaration of Independence, and it's by Inga I'm not going to try to say the name. It'll be in the links.
Okay, good.
So I hope you'll join us. Hillary's fantastic. And if this book or the guest is not your cup of tea, we're going to do a huge range of guests, and I hope that I get to see you guys again. And some of our guests include judges, social workers, authors, musical directors, nonprofit directors, activists, and much, much more. So, I can't wait for more. So thank you all so much for joining us for our prototype.
Thanks.